Hello, beloved listeners. This is Adrienne, and the next conversation I'm bringing you from this Election Time with A and B series is with my friend Michelle Mascarenhas from Movement Generation. She was a co-founder of Movement Generation, and y'all have definitely heard from Movement Generation in this podcast before, and I quote them often because they have some frameworks for strategy that is like really massive scale, looking at what's happening with the planet and looking at what decolonization and just transition can mean. And so I wanted to talk to them about how we're moving through this moment where, in addition to anti-fascism, in addition to anti-genocide, we are in a period of climate catastrophe and transformation. And yeah, how do we land with each other and build communities that can fortify us through this transition where we can take care of our people? So Michelle's a genius, and I think you'll enjoy this conversation. Sending you so much love. Hi, beloved. It's good to see you.
Hi, you too.
Thank you so much for making time for this. Everyone who's been coming on as a guest has been like asked at the last minute to just hop on and be in conversation. And I'm really grateful because I know you have a lot that you can be doing with this time. And I really am grateful that you're here. We've known each other for a long time. Michelle is someone who's been teaching me and who I've admired for a long time. And I am sending so much love to you. I know that Movement Generation is a massive, brilliant, necessary political space. And I know that you're not in the day in, day out of that work now, but I know that you're deeply familiar with it. We were also going to have our beloved friend Trey Vasquez come on with us, and Trey had something else that called him away at the last minute, but we'll find a time sometime to have Trey come on here too. I wanted to start out by asking you how you are.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel really lit up to just be with you and see you on here. And so just much gratitude for all you've been doing in the world. You know, we've known each other. I was thinking about it, what, maybe 2008 or
Yeah.
something like that. And yeah, I remember you tweeting from the Movement Generation Justice and Ecology Retreat in like 2009. And we were like, who is this person on like
I'm
on their
obsessed.
phone in the middle of this retreat? What did they think? Who's looking at their phone right now
They're
watching
like, who's on their phone? Who's
live?
this multitasking?
Yeah,
Who's this?
but look what you've done with that superpower that you've built for our movements, you know? So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
And then
my
just
love.
yeah, so I feel really lit up. And I'm all the things, you know. I
Yeah.
think like so many of us feels like all the big feels, you know. I feel like all the deep like sorrow and grief and anger and rage. And then just like also that it somehow enables me to access like some deep joy.
Yes. That's the
So,
way. I think
yeah.
that there's some part of it. It's all connected. You know, I keep noticing who feels alive right now, even
Mhm.
in the midst of all this death. And sometimes feeling alive, like the only sign of it is grief, or the only sign of it is despair. But it's like, I'm alive to feel this in the face of all these things. And I think that's been a lot for me. I also keep having these moments where I'm like, well, life is good except for the US government and like the way that they're participating in this moment in the world. And that's reductionist, but in a way, there's, I do find I'm deepening into the relationships that I'm in direct relationship with, into in direct proximity to. I
That's
find
right.
myself deepening and having a different set of conversations, about what really matters to us and what we will stand up for, fight for, what moves us into action. Um, and part of why I always want to uplift Movement Generation is because I felt like y'all moved me into a different level of understanding the kinds of actions I wanted to be taking with the rest of my life. And that I wanted to make sure that Earth was a part of everything I was doing for the
Mhm.
rest of my life. And I keep referencing you all. So as I'm talking about like this moment on the clock of the world, I keep being like, I think that those three circles strategy and like what's politically possible, what we actually need, and these false solutions. And I'm like, I'm just trying to keep us from like getting mired in false solutions and taking them to be what's real or what we need, what's possible and what we need. And so I was like, wait, I should just have y'all come on and talk about that. And like, you have so many frameworks that are so helpful. So I want to get into all of that, but I want to do it through this question from Grace. So Grace Lee Boggs, anytime I would visit her, anytime anyone would visit her, she would ask this question, what time is it on the clock of the world? And I would love to hear from your perspective, what time is it on the clock of the world right now?
Woo. Yeah,
Just a little taste, just a little
just a
something.
little taste. Okay. Yeah, grateful for that question and calling in our ancestor teacher. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I want to say, I want to like recall the Doors song, like this is the end.
Mhm.
I've been so grateful to be in movement space with Lada Kiswani over this past 300 days, especially.
Yeah,
And then of course we've been in deep community with her in other spaces.
yeah,
Um, and to see the like just the fierce like belief that this is the end of Zionism, y'all. Like in the midst of this genocide that she can feel in her bones,
yeah,
that this is the end of Zionism, even as like her people, our people, these children, these love-filled humans, are like being slaughtered after writing poems on the internet to share what they're going through,
yeah,
that even in that moment that she can say, like, this is the end of Zionism. Like
yeah,
this is it. And so I just am really I believe that in my bones, and in my spirit. And the end is always a beginning,
that's right.
right? Like this, like I've just thinking about my personal life and like, for all of y'all who've gone through something like 2020, it feels like we're still in 2020, right? Like this 2020 moment, every single human has gone through some massive like upheaval in our personal
Mm,
life, right? And so for me, it's been divorce.
yeah,
And like, I know that in the first couple years of that, it was like, all I could see was and feel is the end, is like the deep grief. I couldn't see anything about the beginning, right?
mhm,
And I didn't want the beginning of anything else, honestly. Like, fuck love, fuck
yeah,
relationships, fuck
yes,
men, like all of it.
yes,
And now I'm like, oh, it's been like 3 years, and I'm in the middle of like my dear sister, like Twinsy, has just moved into the back unit. We're building our like eco-feminist matriarchal commune, like
yes,
so anyway, just a reminder that the end is always a beginning, and we got to put our intentions down as we're ending something about what we're creating. Yeah.
I love that. The conversation I was in just before this was all about seasons and spring and what you have to do in other parts of the year to prepare for spring, like to make sure that spring is fecund and abundant and like that what we need will be able to bloom in the spring. And there's some of it that's just like faith, and there's some of it that's like you have to really let go of a lot. Like the whole world has to let go of everything that looks like life in a familiar way, and go through the underground winter internal place to come out into something else. And so I keep thinking of that now. Like I'm like, oh, I really think that this is the end of so many things. It feels like the end of Zionism. It also feels like the end of other systems that we're living inside of, and that they end because we turn a light back on the injustice of them, and we turn a light back on the way they imbalance everything. And even inside myself, I'm feeling a great ending of, I think, a certain complacency I've had I think I always had an orientation like this is going to happen. Like, I'm working for things that are going to happen after my lifetime and everything is like off in the distance. And I'm like, yeah, oh no, but like also in this lifetime of mine, I have to really let myself let go of some of these things that I took for granted were going to be stability or safety or, just like, okay, I worked hard. Now I get to like sit in a garden somewhere. It's like, that's not this era. That's not this time. This isn't a garden sitting time. If we're awakened, or we can stagger some garden sits, but there's a lot to do. So I wanted to ask you this question because I would call on Octavia Butler often, and I feel like she was always helping us prepare. And she was writing us texts to warn us, like, it could look like this. It doesn't have to, but it could go like this, but it doesn't have to. But like if we're prepared, something else becomes possible. And I think that feels like the essence of the work y'all do at Movement Generation. It has been like, I want to tell you the truth about what's coming and like where it came from so that we can get ourselves prepared for the actual circumstances that we're facing in the now and out ahead. And I remember standing in the training and I remember this exercise with a rope where it was like breaking down like, how much toxin had been put into the atmosphere and like what was, how it's like, oh, it takes 40 years for that to show up and just freaking out and being like, oh, so this is like the 1980s toxins we're dealing with and it's just going to get worse. And they're like, yes. And more, like really telling the truth. Like it really got me together. But then also, y'all were like, and here's what we do based on that. And here's some strategic frameworks based on that. Here's some things that if we all understand this, we can move differently. So I want to ask you that question. What are some things that you wish more people understood about this time and how change happens?
Um, yeah, thank you for calling that. I just feel really moved being with you in this moment, Adrian.
Oh,
Um,
sweetheart, me too.
yeah, so I think the first thing is to name like this is a moment in which the veils are being lifted left and right. The veils, for those of us that weren't on a given front line, maybe not being Palestinian or not being Black or not being Indigenous or not being queer or not being non-binary, all the things, right? And then we see and feel like the complete it's not failure of these systems to care for us because they were not set up to care for us, right?
Yeah.
But we can see that now, right? That veil is being lifted also, right? And the
That's
young
right.
people in encampments and universities, right, are just like on fire around that,
Yeah.
right? Clear, super clear. And so the counter to that really is agency, right? Self-determination, and not just as individuals, but our collective capacity to self-govern.
That's right.
Right. And so I think like the time, what this moment is teaching us is to reclaim that shit. Right.
Yeah.
And what you named earlier about like, we're talking to our people, right? First and foremost, that's really the key is that we're building our crews and our squads and our posses and our like, I got my mama's crew, I got my permaculture crew, I got my political
Yeah.
home over here, I got my, like my
Can
kayak,
you
my
slow
coffee
that down real
house.
quick and then say what political home means for you?
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, I've said this a few times that like I wish everyone understood that electoral process and electoral politics and even a party can't really be your political home.
Mm.
And but I don't think enough people have a sense of what political home means or could look like right now. And especially in and outside of the nonprofit industrial complex. Yeah, how do we politically home ourselves?
Yeah. So for me, so plus one to the nonprofit industrial complex not being able to house our movements.
Mhm.
They have contained our movements vision and heart, I would
Yeah.
say, and
Can
spirit.
I say something, Michelle? When you said that they can, I've been so angry lately about this that I'm like, it feels like like it's made me emotional several times to think about how bamboozled I feel by having watched myself and other people who I know just really have the best intentions and so much energy and so much to give. And they just end up in these cycles where we're just filling out one grant proposal after one grant report after one grant proposal after one grant report for like crumbs from this infrastructure, and then trying to build something vast and interconnected and being, yeah, I just feel like I'm like, it's been like, being so limited, and like even while critiquing it, not being able to break out of it and actually do something that's not extractive. But I've just been feeling such immense grief around where we would be right now if everyone hadn't been writing grant reports for the last, like I was just like, we that time we can't get it back. And I really want it. I want us to stop, we've been practicing something we're calling non-extractive funding, where we're going to funders, or if they come to us, we're like, yeah, you can support us, but we're not jumping through any hoops to do it. If you recognize the work we're already doing and you want to just support it, go ahead. And if you don't, please keep moving, because no one has a 14-person team to review your legal documents. Like, what are you
That's right.
fucking talking about? Anyway, I feel a lot about it. I'm so glad you said that.
Yes, I'm with you. I feel a lot about it too. And like y'all out there, like, you know, come November, we don't know whether like that's going to be, I mean, I think we can say, okay, our movements tried to use this as a vehicle, right? And we've seen the limitations already of that and
Yes,
how it limits our movements.
yes,
But at some point, right, it's not even going to be that. They're not going to be vehicles anymore.
yeah,
And so we we got to be building these other vehicles outside of the nonprofit industrial system.
that's right.
And I think this moment is about how do we jump ship? Like how do we move our labor, our time, our love, our spirit, our relationships outside of this extractive system
Mhm.
and move them into regenerative ways of living, loving, learning, and supporting one another.
Mhm.
And so when I say political home, that's what I'm talking about, right? And actually, Adrienne, I don't know if you remember that, but it's been a long time, but my political commitment within somatics is, I am a commitment to building political home where we can put our bodies behind our hearts
Yes,
to build and create the world we long for, right? And so that's what I'm talking about when I talk about political home, is like I want a crew with me who is like, we're deeply in relationships such that we can struggle
yeah,
and have disagreement and know that we still love each other and we still got
yes,
each other's backs,
yeah,
and we've raised our babies up together, and and like it's going to be there, even if we go our different ways. There's one person that left Movement Generation at some point and is back in the fray. It's like, hey, can I come back? But we still been like,
yeah,
rolling together and hanging together. Anyway, like, I think like, yeah, political home is about like, where are you situated that you can be accountable to, because your values and beliefs are so strongly grounded in that
awesome.
space, right? And resonant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
We all need that. And we need to be building that kind of those translocal movement building infrastructures that other folks who are being awakened every day, every moment can be joining us
That's
in.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think that and it's one of the things, this conversation, I've now spoken with Hala Alian, I spoke with Makani Themba, with Malkia Devich Cyril, with Ashley Woodward Henderson, and with Sindola Diamina. And one of the threads or themes that has been emerging from everyone is like, you need to find your crew, you need to find community, you need to find folks who you make decisions with. And because I think so much of the US illness or sickness, like so much of the US way, is that hyper individualism that makes us really believe that like we have to think and act by ourselves, and that what we think and act by ourselves can be legitimate, even if it has nothing to do with all the people we're in community with.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I've been really tuning into in my own life is that, and really looking around and being like, I invited some people to have a conversation on like, so disaster preparedness in Durham, like, what do we really mean when we say that? And what are people thinking about? And I'm starting to have different conversations with all my friends and family around like,
Yeah.
what are you practicing? What do you plan to practice? Like, if things go this way,
Yeah.
what are you willing to change and to do? And if things go this other way, what are you willing to change and to do? And political home, I have found mine to be a little decentralized. That I'm like, oh, my people are in a lot of different places. And but for me, political home is it's almost kind of an act or a verb, like to home is to reach out to people and be like, okay, I'm spinning. Even these conversations are happening because I was like, I'm kind of spinning out and I don't feel accountable to much more than my emotions. And so I need to be regrounded. And it's been so regrounding to be like, oh, right. I have a vision that goes 7 generations. Oh, right. I'm in community that loves the earth. Oh, right. I'm in community that doesn't move on election cycles. We are aware of them and we can be accountable to the fact that they happen and they really matter to some people. And then there's other things that really matter to our people that we've really seen. Um, yeah, we've really seen like we can take care of each other through a lot of things. And also we do have to be defensive. This is the other thing with Octavia Butler. I always tell people because they're always like, yeah, then she made Acorn and everyone's like living in a commune and it was like freaking dope. And I was like, yes. And they had it like a year and then they got smashed down by the Christian fascists. So, we want to do
Right.
something that gets to last longer than that. So how do we hold each other in the right way, given that? Um, I want to explicitly ask you now to talk about slips, shocks, and slides.
Shock, slides, and shifts.
I always get one of them wrong. I'm always like, no matter what it is, even though I'm like, it's published, it's in my book. There's no reason to get it wrong. But that's who I am, and that's who I'm going to be.
Yeah.
Shocks, slides, and shifts.
Yeah. So a shock, first of all, is something that happens that grabs you, like a punch to the gut, right? So we're having these with increasing frequency, the hurricanes, wildfires, but also political crisis like 9/11 or the aftermath, the unfolding of this war in Gaza that many of us woke up to on October 8th, or the afternoon of October 7th, right here. And so those shocks, they can be political, they can be economic, like 2008 and the financial crisis, but we are experiencing them with increasing frequency, right? I think we can all see this and feel this, and we feel it actually in our bodies. The slides are, well, and I'll just say, right, just to be clear, that is because we are the earth. We are not just a part of the earth or on the earth. We are the earth.
That's right.
And so we are feeling the impacts of 500 plus years of patriarchy, colonization, of the attempt at removing us, like thinking that they could remove us from our right relationship with the land, with the water, with fire, and with the energy and the air and that we breathe and that we're part of, right? Crystal Tuples said this the other day, which made me really understand this in a deeper way of like, we are the land.
We are the land.
Are the land. So we're feeling it, right?
Yeah.
We feel the impacts. I believe it is being felt in the rise in anxiety, depression, all the other psychic movements that are on the rise because if you are awake at any level, right? If you have found ways to not completely shut down as the system tries to get us to do so that it can keep extracting our labor to do really harmful things against each other and the earth. But if you found ways to not shut down, then yeah, you're gonna feel hella much, right? And that's what we're feeling, and that's partly because of these shocks that are like daily occurrences now. And we're like, wait, whoa, whoa, I'm supposed to be feeling a lot right now, but I can't even feel that because there's something else coming, right?
Yeah, I keep uplifting Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams. Years ago, I was sitting with her and she was talking about how we have the technology now to know more than we've ever known about the concurrent suffering in the world, but we have not developed the spiritual technology to be able to handle all of that knowing. And part of what those of us who are intentionally like, I'm taking somatics, I'm learning to feel, part of what we're doing is trying to develop that spiritual technology, both remember and hone this global sensibility. But that makes a lot of this shocks, even for someone who I'm like, I work all the time on learning how to feel. And I still need a spliff at the end of the day. Like these shocks are, I'm like, girl, okay, a
Yeah,
scene. Like I need a moment.
yeah.
And I know there will be more shocks the next day.
Yeah, and then those are on top of slides, right? So the slides are the slow and gradual declines, really,
Mhm.
or decline, I would say declines in like the ability of living systems to hold us, the reduction in resilience. And um so for example, sea level rise, you don't wake up one morning and it's 6 feet higher, right? It happens through, actually it happens often through these shocks, like massive storms we're seeing 100-year storms more and more frequently, for example, right? That manifest as like shit storms in places where sewage is sewage treatment plants are on the waterfront in neighborhoods where then that water gets, this when the water levels rise, the sewage backs up into the streets. This happens, of course, mostly in poor communities, Black and Brown communities. And so that's one example of a slide, right? Rising prices of energy, of food, grocery bills, like who can afford groceries, right? At this point, housing, all of that, right? So those are the slides. But also like the rise in mass incarceration, the rise in surveillance state, the rise in ways to silence us, to silence dissent, right? These are gradual
Yeah.
often, and when we don't see them necessarily as they're being one by one in behind the scenes, places. So yeah, the shocks and the slides, and our job as social movements then is to harness the shocks and direct the slides towards the shifts. Thank you for the hand motions. Towards the shifts that we
Mhm.
really need. We've seen the right do this hella much. It happened after Hurricane Katrina, where the right used that as ground zero to privatize education, transportation, housing, right? And gentrify and force, Black people out in order to profit then off of that land
Yeah.
base. But we have also been moving in that direction, right? Our movements have also been winning shifts, right? In May of 2020, no one was going to say defund the police out loud. And by June, it was out of everyone's lips, including
Yes.
mayoral candidates and city council people.
Right.
And, so we won that, right? Our people won,
Yeah.
our movements, Black liberation movements won that. And land back is another example, right, of a
Yeah.
shift won by Indigenous people, who've been fighting for land back for 500 years. And in a moment of a shock, are able to use that opening to widen the discourse and shift the landscape of what
Yeah.
is politically possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because I think there's also this moment like we don't celebrate often enough. Um, we don't celebrate like, oh, this is a win, this is a victory. I think we struggle to see the things where like we made a shift. it's not as dramatic or bombastic as like, here's a one day of victory.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of the things that I keep trying to find ways to help movements. When I was facilitating, it was like one of my main activities was like, what did we accomplish from the last time we were together? Let's celebrate.
Yeah.
And actually, what I see is the further left we go, the harder it gets for us to celebrate. We're just like, yeah, maybe we got that, but that's not enough. And we need to like go so much further. And right. So I really appreciate you just naming like, yeah, but also like look at what we do have. I'm always looking at stuff. I'm like, we did that. We helped do that. We created the space for that to happen. So thanks for naming that. Yeah, and thanks for breaking that model down.
Yeah. And can I just say one, I don't know how
Say
long.
all many more things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Great.
it's our world. We're doing this.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess I just also want to really call in the movements, our people's movements in the global South right now, and in the
Mhm.
South in the US as well. Yeah. And I think like there's really important organizing models that we need to be learning from and understanding.
Yeah.
Movement generation talks about this as resilience-based organizing, right?
Love
How
that.
do we meet our own needs, like govern ourselves in ways that meet our own, like apply our labor collectively to meet our own needs in ways that actually contest for power, right? Contest on whose right it is to govern our bodies, the land we are dependent on, right? And even our relationships with each other, right? Always learned, we've always taken so much inspiration from the landless workers movement, the MST in Brazil. And we were about to go to their Congresso this year, this month, actually, well, in July. But people may have heard that in southern Brazil, there were massive floods about 2.5 months ago. And in Porto Alegre and like dozens and dozens of villages around there, um, that those communities have been flooded out like permanently.
Oh, wow.
So we're
Oh,
not just talking about disaster recovery or relief in those places, but no, those lands are now no longer habitable for human
okay.
settlements. But the MST had been, organizing people to build first encampments, then those encampments, contest for power successfully such that they become permanent settlements,
Mm.
right? And what we like to talk about as like permanently organized communities,
I like that.
right? That are like meeting our own needs, like economy, basically, right? Managing home in ways that are actually in alignment with what we believe how we should be acting toward each other, making sure that people's basic needs are met, for healthcare, for culturally appropriate healthcare, for education that is for liberation, not domination, for agroecological food systems in which our labor is in cooperation with the earth instead of wielded as a machete or a weapon against it, like all
Yes.
those things. That's what the MST is doing in Brazil, y'all. And with these floods, what they decided is to postpone this Congresso, until next year, because they're super focused right now in supporting those settlements, in relocating, and they're negotiating with the government to make sure that people aren't displaced from their lands and then like scattered, right, as
Right.
individuals. Because the most important thing that we have, right, that the colonization has tried to steal from us is our capacity to collectively like be units of people who are like
Right.
looking out for each other and helping meet each other's needs, caring for each other, right? Building culture and tradition, singing together, having a
Mm.
fire together every night because we're not exhausted from the fucking fuckery of capitalism, right? And that's what they're doing in these settlements, right? And so the idea of people being displaced and becoming like migrant workers for then a new like regime of disaster capitalism, they're like,
Uh-huh.
oh, hell no. We're going to make sure that our people are resettled on lands that are habitable and, that they can They're going to have to rebuild the clinics, the schools,
Wow.
the soil, all of that. But if they do it together, they know that they can do that. And
That's it.
so I just want to name that as like a really important model. And one of the tools and techniques that they use, the MST, is the assembly process. And
Yes.
I'm like, Adrienne, I was just thinking, like, we did this
We did
together.
this.
We did this in Detroit. Adrienne and I helped hold down with some of the people that are actually on this thread right now. um,
Yeah.
Mary Rose and others, yeah, hey y'all. Hold down a like 500 people's movement assembly on ecological justice at the Detroit US Social Forum. And that social forum and the model of people's movement assemblies really came from Brazil and other places in the global South, Porto Alegre specifically, right? Where
Yes.
they were like, our people, this is about agency, right? And our people need to relearn the practice of collective self-governance, right? That like
Yes.
we can talk to each other about our problems, we can identify the problems together, we can like talk about what solutions are going to work for us and are already coming from our communities, and then we can commit to like move forward together, right?
That's
It's like
right.
a pretty basic formula. But that's the process that the MST uses
Mm.
in the settlements, right? And then you have like 150 families in an assembly process. You work on gender, issues, and you have a feminist, uh, like practices, so that you're
Uh-huh.
sure that you're like working the stuff out in how you're co-governing. Um,
Uh-huh.
so anyway, I just wanted to name the MST, but this is happening in other places like
Yeah.
Rojava in northeastern Syria, where that people's movement is like governing at scale 5 to 6 million people, in a feminist, women's liberation at the center and eco justice at the center, like agenda to both defend and protect land, but
Yeah.
not in the form of a nation state, right?
Right.
Like
Yes.
not to build borders, because Kurdish people have been hell of, destroyed and hurt
Yeah.
by the building of borders across
Yeah.
their people's territory. So anyway, I think like there's really beautiful examples of how assemblies, also in the South, in the US South, Taproot
Yeah.
Earth and Project South and Southern Movement Assembly use this people's movement assembly process in the South to really build people's belief in their ability and practice in their ability to self-govern. And I think like
Mm.
on a name, that's a really important
Yeah.
model that we need to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate you naming that, Michelle. Part of what I have been thinking about and speaking about is a cultivation of American humility. So for those of us who live in the US, the major story we've been told since we were born is that we are the superpower and we are the ones who should be helping the rest of the world manage their resources and resolve their conflict um, and develop democracy. And that it takes a humility to sort of flip that on its head and consider like actually maybe we're one of the youngest nations and the most flagrant and the least capable of handling these decision-making processes, the least capable of understanding how to have so much difference coexisting in one space, without like tools for mediating all that difference and finding right relationship with each other. And to me, that process of the World Social Forums and these people's assemblies and other tools, it's so helpful just to be reminded like we're not the only experiment in how humans do what we do as a part of Earth. And we're not necessarily the most successful, even though we've been told, right? So it's like we've been told that the way we do it is success. And we have convinced a lot of people around the world that the way the US is doing things is somehow successful enough to try to get here or try to become a part of this. And yeah, there's just been so much call for humility in my heart lately that I'm like, we have to really say we need to be learning and we need to like look around, I was in Ireland recently, and I was just like learning, like soaking in, like what does it feel like to be in a place that holds whiteness this way? Because it's not the way that I experience whiteness in the US. And there's no shame, there's no disconnect from, or not no, there's people on people on people, but a lot of the people that I was interacting with there and a lot of the random people that I would meet in a restaurant or in a gas station or whatever were connected to their myths, their songs, their stories, their sense of justice, their clarity on genocide, their clarity on all these things. And I wonder, for so many people, what would change in their perspective if they were able to travel and to really be able to go to other places, not as someone who's like, I'm coming in from the democracy kings, but if I'm coming in, I'm like, we don't know how to do this where I live. We don't
Mhm.
know how to keep each other safe where I live. We're trying to figure it out. We don't know how to do democracy where I live. We have not figured out how to manage our relationship to home. So just trying to humble ourselves and that way feels really important. And maybe that leads us into this next question I have for you, because I like that feels like one of the right actions to me is to bring humility into every interaction. What would you see as right actions that you would like to see us taking right now? Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I mean, I think it's like it really is putting our bodies behind our hearts, y'all.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, um,
yeah.
it's been really like sad and disappointing to me, honestly, to
Hmm.
see how few men, like cis men, have been stepping up in the movement to defend life in Palestine.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm like, and then at the same time, there's like really harmful acts being committed um,
Yeah,
by cis men like every day in my communities. And I'm like, where the fuck are y'all?
for your hearts.
Yeah, where is your heart? Like to turn off, um, to shut down your heart in this moment is like dangerous.
It's dangerous. That's the word I was like,
Dangerous.
dangerous. Hmm.
So like that's the first thing is like let's put our bodies behind our let's like actually notice our hearts. Let's take the time to feel. Let's do that in relationship with each other. Let's create spaces to do that, right?
Yeah,
This is one of the things, like you back to the nonprofit conversation that we had earlier. This is like
yeah,
one of the ways that Palestine is freeing us right now is that we're like going outside of our nonprofits to organize around Palestine because it's not
yeah.
being funded.
Yes.
So we're building relationships, rebuilding relationships, like political relationships
Yeah.
outside of the nonprofit structure, right? So I think like creating collective spaces or cultivating collective spaces where we can feel our hearts together. Because honestly, like I can't do that shit alone. Like it's too much for me. I need another heart in the room,
Yes.
Like I need, and ideally more than one heart, and ideally a fire and some food,
Yes.
and some like libations or something,
That's
like
right.
so like what are the collective spaces that we are cultivating to feel together and like to take care of our hearts.
Yes.
And then those places become spaces for us to act from together because none of us can act alone. It's not useful. It's hard, it doesn't feel good. It just creates hard bodies that are like trying to be independent, when we are a collective body. So, you know,
Mm,
let's like actually get together and create those, yeah, like create the spaces where we can put our bodies behind our hearts, and be
I love
healing
that.
that. Yeah.
Well, I was on that point, I was just going to say, part of the emergent strategy approach is that everything large is made up of the small. And when I get overwhelmed, when I'm like, I can't, like, what do? We have to save the whole globe from fascism and genocide. Like, it's just like so
Yeah.
big. And then I'm like, bring it back down to the level at which I'm in relationship with people. And then
Yeah.
figure out, like, how do we center our hearts in what we're doing? And it's so easy to let go of each other, you know, to be like, oh, well, you don't agree exactly with me right now. Fuck you. You haven't gotten politicized to the, because for me, when people say like, you're still, you don't agree with me, I'm like, who has gone and done the political work to help build the bridges from socialization to liberation? Like that's our job. And I think so often movements have become like the place where like our job is kind of to judge whether people have got their politicization just right or not.
Mhm.
And we're the judge and jury, and we're deciding how to shrink our movements all the time. And I'm like, that's not the way. So, you know, I'm like, I constantly say this, but I'm like, movement is supposed to be a sanctuary. It's supposed to be a space where people come and they get more, they get nourished, they get fed, they get held, they get sat down by a fire. And in that zone, then someone is having a conversation around what is it that you were told about this, about this world, about power, about money, about gender, about race, about religion, about binaries. What were you told? And where are you open to changing? Because, you know, I keep bringing this piece up too, that I think if we ever get in an orientation where we're like, all the change has to happen elsewhere, outside of ourselves, and none of it has to happen within and between us, then there's nowhere to go from that actually, because everyone's holding that position, no one can shift. And instead trying to be like, if you shift, how can I meet that shift in
Mhm.
some way with my own shift? Even if it's just to see your humanity again, when I had decided that you're a troll bot, evil person, or whatever, you know, I'm like, okay, wait, okay, you are still a human being, and maybe you've got a toxic heart, and maybe you are stuck in a toxic structure. And is my job to abandon you there, to yell at you for being there, or to create a better invitation to where I am, to create a bridge, to create a way to get to here, and for me to keep being like, and someone needs to keep pulling me. You know, I love that I have people in my life who are, I think, living more radically than I'm living. Like, I don't know if anyone's thinking more radically than I'm thinking in my brain, but in terms of like moving that from here into like my hands, you know, I have an herb garden right now, and I'm so daunted by it, but I'm going out there and just being like, you are mint. You know
Yes.
what I'm saying? I'm just like, I'm gonna learn how to do this because I'm a little witch and I do need to know how to do something other than think radical thoughts, right? And even write radical poems, which I feel, you know, into what I get to do. I'm grateful for it. But there's something about getting in that tangible relationship back with land, that tangible relationship with people. It brings it all back down to the level of like, what can I do in a lifetime? And if all of us are thinking like, what can I do in a lifetime? What can I change in a lifetime? How far can I grow in a lifetime? That's very different from like, how many other people can I convince that I'm right?
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think with like somatics, right, what we learned is like if we don't do the work, we just get smaller and smaller. We
Yes.
create more and more walls around
Yeah.
us to protect us from our fear of hurt,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I am doing this right now, y'all. I'm just saying, like I am not,
We're human. We're
we're
doing
all
it.
learning. And so like my commitment in this life is like what James Baldwin taught us, right? What Audre
Yes.
Lorde taught us is like, how do I keep getting bigger, freer, and more loving?
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Um, and imagine if our movements, if we were all doing that in our movements,
That's
like
right.
we have this bullshit, like so many people, like y'all, 5 years ago, there weren't surveys about like, because like, do people want capitalism or not?
That's
And like
right.
now the surveys are out there and like it's very
People are
clear. Like,
asking.
yeah. And so where are we in that conversation, right? Like how are we, not just where are we, but how are we showing up to that conversation,
That's right.
right? Like
That's great.
open-hearted, relational. Yeah, and like again, like rooting our politics in the earth is very different than rooting our politics in a line.
That's right.
We just would always say like we don't have a line, we have a line of inquiry. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
how can we be open to the questions and listen, really
Yeah.
listen and listen.
That's right. I really appreciate that because I think there's also a part of me that's like, I really examine my own behavior all the time. I really examine it constantly. And I want more of that and more people being like, oh yeah, let me see, like, I know what I believe. How is my action aligning with that? Like, if I'm an abolitionist, am I aware of where I am moving towards punishment in my life? If I am an anti-Zionist, am I aware of places where I still hold the socialization of Orientalism or the socialization of anti-Arab, anti-Muslim thinking inside of that? And if I'm anti-Zionist, can I also hold my anti-Semitism, my not being anti-Semitist? Or wait, hold on, help me out. My words are like spun around, but how do I be in solidarity with my Jewish
Yeah.
siblings and love their need for safety and not say that anyone else has to sacrifice their safety for the sake of it in the same way that no one else has to sacrifice their safety for mine, right? That I'm like, I don't want to live in a world in which mine or the kids that I love or anyone else is seen as so precious. I'm like, where am I doing that in my actual life? When I bought my home, I was like, I'm buying this home. How is this a part of my land back work? Like, do I build it into my will? Am I building a relationship with Indigenous communities now? Like, how do every single place is a front line. And I'm like, if everyone tends to the front lines that are actually theirs, I think we go further than we do if everyone's just pointing at what they can see that they think everyone else should be doing. And then getting in relationship with other people. I'm like, I'm looking for the other people who are trying to live in this post-nationalist, beyond border, earth related, love related collective that actually has room for all of us and all of us to recover from the harm that has been systematized, right? I'm like, this has been systematized. This is not an accident. I didn't just end up thinking this. Being around kids is also my great teacher because I like, they're like, I'm curious and I
Yeah.
don't know and I kind of love everybody and I want to play and like that's the orientation. I'm like, I still feel like that at 45, almost 46. In my heart, I still feel like I want to play and I want to connect and I want to grow and I want to spend some time being by myself and figuring it out. And then I want to learn and be a human being. Every new thing I have to learn or unlearn is me as a toddler learning to walk. Every single time I'm gonna fall down so much more than I expect. Because I'm looking around, I'm like, well, it seems like people know how to do this, but I don't even know how to do it yet. So I think that that's been a really big piece for me. Which comes the final question I want to ask you, and I think it's actually been inside of everything that you've been saying, but what are you practicing to protect your beliefs during this time? Like there's so much pressure and crisis and like binary, like choose a side of everything all the time. And I feel like you believe in complexity and you believe in the fecundity of life and you believe in, yeah, just really being able to harness everything that's happening towards what we want. How are you protecting those beliefs in this time?
Mm. I mean, that's a hard question because, like you're saying about our ability to change and our need to be willing to change. Like,
Mhm.
honestly, I'm trying to like be open to changing my beliefs.
Yes, that's right.
I'm not trying to just protect my beliefs. I mean, I am really trying to just open myself up, back to the like bigger, freer, more loving is like my beliefs have been constructed within a system that is very harmful, right? And as again, like these veils have been lifted for me, I got to question, where did these beliefs come from? Like where is my belief in like what femininity means or what it means to be a woman or what, like where did those come from, right? And how am I, yeah, there's all kind, I mean, me and my like 20-year-old who's back from college right now and staying with me, like I'm having like mind-blowing conversations as she is like at this stage in which also through the encampments and solidarity for Palestine, really questioning everything, right? Like,
Yes.
and so how the only way that I can keep getting bigger, freer, and more loving is if I'm also like
Mm.
challenging those beliefs about monogamy, beliefs
I was
about
about to say, someday I'd love to have a conversation, like come back because I'm like, I feel like again, theoretically for a long time I'd been like, yeah, poly, I love it, makes sense. Non-monogamy was making a ton of sense to me. but then actually being like, oh, my heart can really love multiple people, like for real, is astounding. And it feels like part of all the rest of the work.
Right.
And yeah, so sometime maybe we'll come back and just talk about that. I want to do it last October, what I was about to launch was a dating show, like a love show on Instagram. I was just gonna have people come on and talk about the love they want to call in. And and then everything popped off in Palestine. I was like, we're pausing on this for now, but I still want to pursue that. And I want to talk about love and non-monogamy and all these other things so
Yeah,
much with you. So I'm glad you brought it up.
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. That's what I would say. I'm not trying to protect my beliefs. I'm trying to move from, yeah, widen and move from my heart, and
Yes.
like as I'm like meeting so many new people also in this movement, in
Mhm.
solidarity with the liberation of Palestine, um, and many other fronts, like I'm going to Kenya tomorrow, and
Yes.
deeply, like just in so much like awe of the people there and how they are moving, to again defend life and
Mhm.
protect life and challenge systems. And I'm going there to help with Taproot Earth to like help build a movement for global climate reparations, and
Yes.
like reframes climate from like green energy and green jobs or whatever to like land back and capital
Yes.
back to the people and communities that it was stolen from, right? In the form of labor, ancestral labor, blood, death, all of the things, the transatlantic slave trade, that depeopled lands, indigenous peoples' lands on the continent of Africa.
Yeah.
So, like, that's what the climate movement needs to be, right? Is
Yes.
about reparations and land back. And the people of
Beautiful.
Kenya are like helping to lead that in their fight against the World Bank and the IMF, trying to define how their government should be allocating resources, right? So, so yeah, just feel really open. Like I think, rather than defense, it's about
Yes.
tuning into like, how can I open more? How can I be more permeable, let more in, more people, more information, more different ways of seeing the world. Um,
Mm. I love this because it's like if the belief is really interdependence, then the way you protect that is by practicing interdependence. Right?
yes,
It's like,
yes,
oh, I defend or protect my beliefs every time I practice them. It's like I actually put them in motion and then I let them guide me through things, where I'm like, oh, it's okay if maybe some people on the internet are mad at me today. Like I'm practicing what I believe. I'm
yeah.
practicing interdependence. I'm practicing listening for those who are impacted by my decisions and not just those who also benefit from them. And I'm practicing. So I love that. Um, I wanted to ask you if there were any things you wanted to invite people towards. I think you mentioned there was maybe a book that you wanted people to read with you.
Yes, I grabbed a copy of it.
Awesome.
I've been giving this to all my loves, and basically, if you're one of those people who I've given this book to and you haven't read it yet, probably I haven't called you. Um, no, but
Yeah,
this is
that's
like
why.
my love language right now. But I really encourage
Do you
everybody
say
to.
what it's called? Because it's like backwards on the
Oh,
thing.
right. It's called Everything for Everyone, an oral history of the New York Commune, 2052 to 2072.
Yes.
So it's an oral history. It's like interviews with
Mm.
the regular people who helped hinge, be on the hinges of the transition and transformation of systems as this extractive economy is collapsing, which we are already in the midst of,
Yeah.
right? How are people harnessing the shocks and directing the slides towards the shifts that we need to be able to
Mm.
self-govern, and restore relationships towards liberation instead of domination.
Love it.
So it's
Good.
an amazing book. I love it. I'm really encouraging folks to read it. It's published by Common Notions Press. And if you order 5 copies, they'll give you 40% off. 5 copies or more. It's called Everything for Everyone, an oral history of the New York Commune, 2052 to 2072. Maybe somebody could put it in the chat if you heard me, but Everything for Everyone. And I'm going to do a book club, y'all. So join my little IG thread.
Awesome.
And maybe Adrienne can, maybe an MG, like we can do this together. But yeah, it's really great. So get it.
And I'll make sure the name goes in the caption of
Great.
the reel too.
Great.
Thank you so much for making this time to talk with me, to share your wisdom, to share movement generations wisdom and frameworks. And it all helps. It's all, basically we're trying to just pour a lot of water and good fertilizer on the soil of this moment where it feels like, oh, this soil can only support one tree. It's like, actually, it's still all of us doing many, many things here. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna stop this. I'm gonna post it, share it out. It'll be on my page. It'll be on Movement Generations page. It'll be on your page. And there's going to be more, but then we'll take the audio from this and also put it in the How to Survive the End of the World podcast feed so that people can listen to it in multiple ways. And yeah, just trying to seed something in. So pass it on to your friends if this conversation was helpful for you. And yeah, be good to each other, be good to yourselves. Okay.
Much love, y'all. Much
Much
love.
love. Till next time.